You don't always have to speak to be effective. Sometimes the greatest impact comes when you say nothing at all. The strategic use of pauses is one of the most underrated techniques in speaking. If all you do is speak at your audience, you don't give them the time to process your message. At the same time, if you stutter and stumble through what you're saying, then there isn't enough coherence for your audience to take on your message either. Getting that happy balance is what we're going to talk about in today's video. In January 2009, I ran home from school so that I could watch the live inauguration of Barack Obama. Obama was being inaugurated in the Eastern time zone in the US, and that meant that here in the UK, it was just getting started as I finished school. I was running home to see Obama because he was the first politician that I had seen in my lifetime who really inspired me. Someone I looked to as a leader, someone who I saw as a role model and an example to follow. Now, you might not necessarily agree with Obama's politics, but you can't deny that he's a very effective and charismatic public speaker. And one of Obama's signature techniques is the use of the pause. Sometimes he holds that pause for so long you wonder if he's forgotten what he's going to say. And maybe a couple times he has forgotten what he's got to say. But he maintains that composure and conviction in the use of his pauses. And that's something that, whatever your politics, you can learn from in the way Obama addresses an audience. And that's what we're going to look at today. We're going to look at how we can use this signature skill that I think Obama is a fantastic example of, and how we can start to bring that into our speaking. The first time when you can use a pause is when you've forgotten what you're going to say. I just made a joke about it with Obama. Sometimes those pauses are so long, you do wonder if he's forgotten what he's going to say. But the thing with a pause is the audience don't know. They don't know if you're pausing for effect or whether you're pausing because you forgot something. And so often when we forget the next thing that we're going to say or we lose our place, we get flustered. So as I was saying, the thing is, what I'm trying to say is, 2 seconds, folks. I've lost my train of thought. I'm off track. I've forgotten where I'm going. That doesn't fill you with confidence, does it? When you see someone who's stumbling and bumbling around the stage. Quite often, instead of starting to get flustered and getting into all of those awkward hesitations and crutch phrases that often fall into that space, just taking that time to pause, take a breath. Sometimes all the brain needs to get going again is just a little bit of extra oxygen to go, yeah, right. I can start putting those neurons back together again. So learning how to use the pause when you're collecting your thoughts, when you're moving from one place to the other, when you're planning where you're going next with your speaking, is a real lifesaver on stage. Where if you start learning how to use it in low pressure situations, it's there in your toolbox ready for the higher pressure situations. The second time that you want to bring in a pause is after a key statement. A lot of people rush through the important sound bites of their speaking. For example, one phrase that I often say when it comes to speaking is public speakers are leaders, and leaders need to be public speakers. I want to leave a pause in between those two statements and after those two statements, because I really want the audience to get that. I really want you to get that. That's one of the most important messages that you'll see coming through these videos. If you've been watching videos on this channel on a frequent basis, you'll have heard that message coming through again and again. And that's something that I really want to drill into your mind, of seeing yourself when you're on stage as a leader. It's a different mindset shift that we need in order to be effective leaders. And if I just rush through that, public speakers are leaders and all leaders need to be public speakers. The way that you can be a good public speaker is by using strategic pauses. The importance of that message gets lost, doesn't it? You can see a really obvious example of this when it comes to humor. When you hit the punchline, you want to make sure that punchline lands. And if you go and watch some amateur stand-up comedy, what you'll find is that often the material of an amateur stand-up comedian isn't that much different from a professional comedian. The difference is the way they deliver it, and quite often they just don't quite let that punchline sit with the audience for long enough. This is when you want to bring in a strategic pause. When you have a key statement, a key soundbite, a key thought or idea that you really want to sit with your audience, give them time to process and absorb that, that's when you need the pause. Our Facebook group, Rise and Inspire Speakers, provides you with a safe, supportive community to develop the skills to get your message out into the world. We host a virtual summit, Inspire Week, within the group every month, where you can sign up for a 30-minute slot to speak live in the group. This is a free opportunity you can sign up for month after month to practice your skills, try new things, and refine aspects of your story and message. There is a ton of educational content that gets pumped into this group. You can access ongoing educational resources that help you gain more confidence on camera, create more compelling speech content, and develop a deeper connection with your ideal audiences. Speaking of connection, the members of our community are fantastic. They are like-minded people who, just like you, want to make a difference in the world and will cheer you on and encourage you every step of the way. If you want to master your virtual speaking skills, then this is the place to be. The third time where you want to use a pause is after you ask a question. Just like important statements, quite often speakers rush through their questions. Imagine I'm on stage just now speaking to you as the audience, and I say, who here has a fear of public speaking? The thing about the fear of public speaking is that it's an irrational fear. There's no reason, and I could go on and on and on. Do you notice how I rushed through that question? When we're public speaking, we want to think of public speaking as a conversation. It's not exactly like a conversation because one person is doing the majority of the talking. Although some of you may be thinking, that actually does sound like some of my conversations, and I'm on the receiving end of it. Although it's not exactly like a conversation, we want to make it feel like a conversation to our audience. When you ask a question and you just rush on to the next thing you're going to say, it's like you don't care about the answer. You don't care about the audience's perspective. You don't care about their opinion. You don't care about their experience. And that's not a feeling we want to be leaving our audience with. When you ask questions to the audience, firstly, you should mean them. This is something I've ranted about elsewhere, about how people use these hypey affirmational questions of who here wants to make money? Who here wants to be successful in their business? They are BS questions. All that people are doing there is they're trying to hype you up so that they can influence you and manipulate you. When you ask a question, you should care about the answer. And that pause shows that you expect an answer. Now, the audience doesn't have to verbalize that answer. You can just leave that question with them and give them a few seconds to think about it. You may want people to be raising hands. You may want people to be shouting out a word or a phrase. That doesn't matter. As long as you leave that pause, it shows that you care about the audience producing an answer, even if it doesn't come ultimately into the speech that you're doing. So there you have it. 3 times where you should be using a pause. Pauses are a fantastic kit. Admittedly, they sometimes can be overused a little bit, So be strategic and think about when those best times to bring in the pauses are. You don't want to be slowing down your speech too much, because that can take the energy and the cohesion out of it. But equally, if you find yourself a little too fast-paced and racy, then those pauses can just cut it down for you and allow the audience the time and space to process what you're saying. And if they process what you're saying, they're more likely to absorb it. And if they're more likely to absorb it, they're more likely to act upon it. And as I said earlier, speakers are leaders. And as a leader, it's your responsibility to not just talk to your audience. It's your responsibility to get them to act. Now, I think that statement deserved a pause.